Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning in US. Hope you're doing well today. I'm Guillaume Carlier, the head of content and innovation for Propelled by MIPIM. Today again, daily talk with the same way as usual. 20 minutes talk and then 10 minutes Q&A. You can still ask any question you want with your Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And feel free, the question will be answered by the end of the session. Today, actually, I'm more than happy to receive Brad Dockser, the CEO of Green Generation. Hi, Brad. I hope you can hear me well. And you'll be joined today by Dominique Ramos-Ruiz, the director of LC Building at Green Generation. Hi, Brad. How are you?
Guillaume, good morning. How are you? Or good afternoon.
Really good. Oh, yeah. Good morning on your side. You're right. You're right. Can you hear us, Dominique?
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I know you're going to talk about how PropTech can bolster the confidence in the COVID-19 area. And I'm actually really impatient to have your answer about it. Please, the mic is yours. I know you want to share your screen, Brad.
Yo, merci. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and perhaps for a few of you, good evening. What we wanted to do is talk just a little bit about some of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on at Green Generation, both with our own teams and with our clients around the world over the last 3 or 4 months. Let me just give you a bit of context to help set this up. So Green Generation, of which I am the CEO and founder, is an award-winning company that interestingly operates at the intersection of energy, real estate, capital markets, and technology. And we bring a very interdisciplinary approach to thinking about energy, sustainability, healthy buildings. We are based here in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm sitting today. We also have offices in London, Tokyo, and Shanghai. And in a sense, what we do is we really run 5 businesses. Our flagship business is what we call solutions. And that's where we work with assets and portfolios to lower primarily energy-related operating costs, drive cash flow, asset value at the asset level. And at the same time, in addition to the financial outcome, we also have a co-benefit of resiliency and sustainability in healthy buildings. But we also have a venture capital platform, which invests in and focuses on technologies that improve the value of assets. Our focus there is on asset technologies that impact somewhere the income statement of the building itself. And increasingly, things like indoor air quality and healthy buildings are a key component to this. We also have an energy data analytics business called Emerald, which is both an M&V tool, but also a standalone portfolio analytics tool that's used to both provide and analyze data for better decision making. And then finally, we have a principal business, which is focused on real estate that has a particularly large energy related opportunity, older building systems or large energy use that we can bring this integrated approach of energy, capital market technology, and real estate to bear to drive value. And then finally, the newest business is focused on creating and trading carbon offsets. Historically, these were primarily focused from agriculture and forestry. We're increasingly looking at creating them from permanent reductions of energy in the built environment to help companies go to net zero and offset their carbon. And then finally, just to sort of complete the setup, we work with people around the world, and it's always about creating and executing an integrated business plan. Historically, what that meant was people had a capital markets plan, having the right kind of debt, a human resources plan, a sales and marketing or leasing plan. What we believe strongly is that people often don't have a healthy building plan. They don't have an energy plan. They don't have a wellness plan. And it's developing that plan in a way that integrates with the other 3 is where you basically end up with an integrated business plan to drive the business. So this won't come as a surprise to you. We're at a unique moment in history with an unprecedented focus on health and socioeconomic issues. The interesting thing in all this is while this has been led primarily by elected officials, the business community actually has a really critical leadership role to play in here. And that's what you're starting to see as we look to recover, because it's these positive narratives about a business, about an asset, about a shopping center, about a hotel that will either allow it to win or lose customers. And we think there's a really unique opportunity to capture new customers, capture new business if you message correctly. But the reality, as we're now discovering, is the government isn't going to reopen the economy. You know, elected officials, governors, mayors, they can tell you that the restaurants are open, stores are open, but that doesn't reopen the economy. People open the economy. And we've got to figure out how businesses don't suffer so that people are confident in re-engaging. When a storm comes through, you can look up in the sky and you know the storm is done. COVID-19 doesn't offer that type of situation. We don't have the ability to look outside and know the risk is past. And so we have to find a different way to message that type of security to people. So what are the key issues today? Businesses need to create trust, recognizing that you can't eliminate the risk. We don't have a vaccine today, and even if we have a vaccine, it's not certain that it will be a vaccine like polio where it's eliminated. It may much be more like the seasonal flu, which the risk is simply eliminated. We don't know. And so how do you do that? How do businesses instill trust with their stakeholders? One of the important things to us here is a broader definition of what stakeholders actually means, because too often we think of the office buildings relationship, the stakeholder is the tenant. But what about the employees of the tenant? What about the guests of the tenant? What about the people that come to the building, that work in the building, the community adjacent? It's important to understand who all these people are so you can address the risk and create what we think of as a multi-layered approach to healthy buildings. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But most importantly, this is about businesses controlling their narrative, telling the story they want told, not letting others tell the story, but rather doing it in a way that creates essentially the business of the future. And so this really comes down to us is what are the fundamentals of trust? So trust is fragile, it's precious. This is the speech we give to our children and relatives, that it's really hard to create a good name, but it's really easy to lose it. And so we have to work hard and want to get it, and we have to guard it like crazy to make sure we don't lose it. And in doing so, we need to be very transparent and thoughtful in large measure, because there's so much information out there today. Everyone will see through anything you do to the core of it. And so how you message is really important. The new normal needs a new approach. The reality is we're not the same people we were 3 or 4 months ago. And the businesses, the offices, the shops, the hotels, the places we go, they can't be the same either. And so the new normal is a different normal than the one that was 3 or 4 months ago. And we have to recognize that, and we have to find ways to communicate that. And the way to communicate that is through multiple senses. We take in information 5 ways and only 5 ways. We hear it, we see it, we smell it, we taste it, we touch it. There are only 5 ways to get information into our brains. And all those things work together. They work instinctually, they work instantaneously, and they form, they're like a muscle. So over time, they create an instinctual response. You smell a certain thing, you immediately have a response to it. You see a certain thing, you know there's danger. And we need to do the same thing with our buildings to create a positive feedback loop in order to prepare them for the future. As we think about this, there are really 4 key components to the fundamentals of trust: communication, technology, data, and verification. Communication is very straightforward. It's messaging to our stakeholders. It's building confidence with them. And in large measure, we're doing that by the use of technology. Historically, technology was something that we spent a lot of time trying to integrate into buildings so that you didn't see it. Sensors you wouldn't see, air quality filters you didn't see. We think that we're in a very different place today where technology needs to be much more overt, much more explicit. You can't just say there's an air filter in the building. You now need to see it. You need to have some way to know it's operating. You need to hear it. The same goes for sensors. We don't think they should be integrated in a way that you don't see them anymore. things need to be brought out. This will reinforce visually the outcomes that the technologies are doing. And then data. Data tells you how a technology is doing. It communicates back to you, are you exceeding your baseline? Is a space good or bad, healthy, unhealthy? And then finally, one of the interesting things is we think that increasingly there's a much greater role for third-party verifications than there might have been in the past. Third-party verifications are important because people tend to trust them. They tend to believe that a LEED building or a BREEAM certified building is a better building. They tend to believe that a building that has been well certified or fit well certified is a better, healthier building. And one of the values of doing that is when the plaque is on the outside of the wall, you're seeing that before you even get to the building. This is a visual reinforcement, and it creates a connotation, a correlation with certain expectations, certain things you've come to believe. Briefly, let's just talk about the communication strategy and then sort of go into what this specifically means. As I said, broad definition of stakeholders, residents, tenants, customers, employers, but also thinking it's the community, it's government officials, it's your neighbors. The messengers can't just be elected officials. Today, we think businesses, building owners have to become much more active participants in all this. And then again, really driving these 4 key themes, using data, communicating to all the senses, being very clear, and doing all this in a manner that engages people to both create their impression and then also create shared accountability. The strategy has to really be empathetic. It needs to listen. It needs to be focused on community and safety. It needs to be selfless. As I said before, we're in a different place. Things need to be much more obvious. They need to be much more present. It's no longer acceptable for somebody just to be told, we have better air quality or we clean better. They need to see explicit evidence of actually doing that. That includes signage, that includes data. And I think the other thing that's important in all this is to look for comparisons. We have a whole sort of, in our brains, a whole sort of mental library of different things. You know, the mountains in Switzerland or mountain air is good, ocean is good. And the possibility of thinking about comparing the air quality in our building or in our city or community at this moment is the same as Zermatt, Switzerland or Fiji, has a really positive connotation to create health and safety perceptions, because we've already, in our minds, we already have certain expectations and ideas that those are actually good things. And finally, communication needs to follow the EAST principles. It needs to be easy, it needs to be attractive, it needs to be social, and it needs to be timely. Timely is really important now because in an age of lots of information, we need to move quickly in addressing and remediating and communicating solutions. Dominic, I will turn it over to you.
Great. So going with the 5 senses that Brad mentioned earlier, this really plays into how to communicate in various ways to your stakeholders through initiatives that really, I guess, as Brad mentioned earlier, bring the invisible visible. And so we've outlined how that plays into sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. And just to give some examples of how that might look or feel is the experience, right at the entrance of a building and how that building smells, whether there's a certain scent that signals to the occupant that this building has been cleaned. It's about making some of the building operation schedules more visible and transparent. It's about, maybe activating the sound of fans, showing that the building is bringing in fresh air. So these are the things that we've outlined. And then going into the technological aspects of this and how that plays out. Brad, if you bring that to the next slide. Yeah, so getting more specifically here, over the past few months, building factors such as indoor air quality, space density and utilization, water quality and access, and lighting have been brought to the forefront. Each of these factors will play an important role in the reopening of our buildings in the short term, but also resilience in the long term. And improving upon these areas, in most cases, will require some sort of technological solution. And indoor air quality, for example, this may be space purification devices in individual spaces that improve air quality and provide clean air throughout the day, but also making those visible. So going back to the senses, HVAC air distribution systems, there are a lot of different ways to explore technological solutions for this part. Looking at ultraviolet C, UVC lights in the HVAC systems, also looking at air quality control strategies that can reduce pathogen risk. Also air filtration devices. One that a lot of people are familiar with are higher MERV filters that can capture smaller particulate sizes, even down to viruses. Ozone cleaners, so looking at electrostatic and fogging disinfection and using charged particles to clean HVAC equipment. These are all highly technical things, but just a viewpoint of how many different strategies there are, as well as monitoring, which I think in many ways is paramount, because building occupants will start demanding and asking for their ongoing performance, which I'll get into in a couple more slides. Going into space utilization, this is one that I think, especially in urban environments, we hadn't really thought about, because previously it was about densifying the buildings, and now we need to figure out a different way, a different normal, as has been referenced. So looking at occupancy management devices, different sensors that are helping us establish new capacity limits. These capacity limits may be different in a conference room versus an open work plan versus a lobby or a break room for lunch. But also the measurement using density with IoT devices. So measuring density with IoT devices, connecting those and understanding in live time how all of these spaces are being utilized. That also allows you to study patterns as it relates to usage, and which buildings or which spaces are being occupied or more dense at different points of the day. Tracking has been a new thing. So symptom tracing, contact tracing methods, allowing notification of potential exposure. We've seen that on both sides of the spectrum, from highly manual to highly technological in places like Asia and Singapore. I know Brad mentioned a recent trip there and how advanced they were in this process. Access to water is something that has also been elevated as it relates to cleaning protocols, also testing the water and making that that's testing schedule visible. Also drinking water, which people are now thinking twice about. So thinking of technological alternatives or different devices that can allow touchless drinking experiences. Lighting plays a really interesting role here as well. Daylighting, color tunable lighting, dimming, and then also lighting for purposes of cleaning. In some research studies, we've seen that light, certain sources of light can deactivate viruses and can be used to disinfect surfaces. So you're not only providing lighting as a means for ongoing health and performance of the occupants, but also to clean and disinfect. A sample solution here is laid out. So looking at the legend, you have indoor air quality, so covering the things I mentioned previously, space utilization, access to water, and lighting. In order for these to be effective and accurate, air purifiers, for example, monitors and sensors will need to be located in potentially every room, depending on their size. People are going to increasingly focus on this and also expect it to be more visible. Space utilization is used throughout, again, going back to the monitoring of usage patterns and density in live time, drinking fountains, and then the lighting. So you see that almost every room in this diagram has every aspect incorporated at some point. And then getting into data visualization, monitoring. So these are some aspects that should be focused on, but monitoring should be constant, and readings should be publicly displayed. And that can be done either through an app or a digital platform to provide updates. This could be in an elevator. If your elevator has the visible screens. This is something that could be incorporated throughout all of the digital surfaces throughout your building. Also, the utilization of colors, lights, and other visual indicators to contextualize the data. Brad mentioned comparisons earlier to other life experiences or other things that are more familiar to us. That can also play into these strategies as well. Focusing on qualitative levels based on verified numeric levels. So that really solidifies that right there. The focus areas here are definitely air quality, water quality, and then getting into verification. We really think that building occupants will undoubtedly return more discerning and with higher expectations, as mentioned on almost every slide. Third-party performance verification plays into this, and it really matters because buildings or building occupants may prefer a building that has been awarded a healthy building seal of approval, and one that is a performance-based certification that is helping to monitor things like air and water quality. That really helps set the framework as well for cleaning protocols, for emergency preparedness plans, and other building management factors. One thing that may be different now is that some of these certifications require testing every so many years, whereas we think that these testing and these audits may actually need to be more frequent in order to ensure that trust in the building occupant. And then the plaque in the end is something, again, that makes the invisible visible, and that needs to also be prominently displayed and communicated to stakeholders in a lot of the various ways.
So let me just, Dominic, thanks very much. So let me just give a quick example as we start to wrap up. So let's take the example of the building entrance. Again, as I said, 5 senses, all of them in a perfect world get triggered some way. So sight, before we get into the building, we see a building certification. We're primed for a positive experience, whether it's LEED or WELL or FitWell or BREEAM. We go into the building, we see the data visualization. We've taken the numbers, which don't really mean very much to us, humidity, VOC, fine particulate matter, and we've reduced them down to both a color and a shape and a visual that says the building is healthy. We've reinforced that idea. We need to see that the cleaning is actually much more visible. We strongly believe that the best practices will include having cleaning being done during high traffic moments in an office or a hotel right at the entrance so people see. We also think it's important to perhaps augment the uniform of the cleaners with the hat or a vest in some way that make it clear, part of the clean team, the green team, healthy buildings team, to reinforce that what you're doing. We also need to hear. We need to hear the message from the staff that comes in, what we're doing. And in a weird way, we've spent so much time trying to get things like air fans to be silent. We think maybe this is now a time where they need to have just to be a little bit audible. We actually installed yesterday air purification from a company called Wind, which we recently invested in, which is focused on indoor air quality. And we like the fact that even at the low settings, we hear just a small amount of background noise so that people know it's working. People know that the UV light, for instance, is working. How do you, if you have a UV light system, no one's going to know it's there. So do you have a light or something visual in the lobby that indicates it's active? They need to smell the clean. It's important that, you know, instead of pine, lilac, roses, some of the scents we used to use in spaces, we now need to have something that maybe smells faintly of disinfectant or cleaning. Hospital is in, garden is out, if you will. Touch, paperless experience, that's going to be included on guest passes, access, hand cleaning. Even things like when you walk in, you don't want to feel any sort of grits. Surfaces under your feet need to be really smooth and shiny, not slippery, but smooth. Because if you feel a little bit of grit, it's going to change your impression very, very quickly. And then even things like taste, you know, again, waterless, touchless water, making sure the water is filtered. And, you know, where we used to have lots of mints and things like that in hotel lobbies and office building lobbies and stores, those are probably gone for some period of time. So finally, let me just sort of summarize this. You know, it's critical to use PropTech and technologies and implement them to improve the health of the building. It's critical that we collect and display data on the performance of the building. How does it relate to health? What are we doing? What we're doing needs to be clear. It needs to be transparent. Creating a culture of sustained behavioral change. If you do this time and time again, they say 4 to 6 weeks is the time it takes to create a habit. We have habits now from COVID-19 about what we expect, what we consider healthy. We need to overcome that in the built environment and make things very easy and actionable for people. But probably most importantly, if you compare this to 2008, 2008 was about getting through a crisis by not spending money. This one is going to actually require spending money to get through it. Spending money to improve your building, spending money to communicate what you're doing. And for the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to get a premium. You're going to end up with a building that has higher occupancy, better rents, is more attractive. Over time, as more and more people do it, it may lose some of that luster. But we know for quite a while, this is going to be something very positive and correlated with value. And then finally, just understand there is no shortcut. This will not be a fast recovery. It's going to be a slow process. But it's really about sort of setting the direction, getting velocity later. But direction first, velocity second is going to be critical on this. So with that, Guillaume, we'll stop. We'll see if you've got any questions out there. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for this great presentation, Brad. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Definitely a bit longer than the other. We won't have a lot of time, but I'm sure people would like to have some precisions because you've talked a lot. I mean, I could hear. I won't go back to everything you said, but you talked about signage, about data, security, air quality. I mean, a lot of different points. But can you maybe give some more details about what tech we're talking about? What kind of, are we talking about IoT? Are we talking what are the real tools backward?
Yeah, well, I think the exciting thing is we're really talking about a whole broad suite of technologies in a building. So there's been a lot of focus recently about air quality, and I think we've talked a lot about that: filtration, airflows, flushing, integrating with windows if you can get more exterior lighting, exterior air overnight and do the night flushes. We're talking increasingly about lighting and better lighting, circadian lighting that provides a more positive response, hormones, productivity, reduced health. But we're also talking about, as you said, Internet of Things and sensors. There's a lot of devices in buildings that have information that is valuable to control. It's valuable to create an impression. But not all these devices are integrated back into the building management system. And I think the final piece where we're going to see a lot more focus is on how to visualize and contextualize this data. Air quality talks about, okay, we're going to reduce the fine particulate matter, the VOCs. We were meeting with a company last year that said they had brought a particular particulate down from, say, 500 parts per million to 5. And they were very proud of that. And they said they had a meter that showed the number 5 for this particulate in this office space. And I said, well, what does that mean? Like, what's really great for this? He said, anything under 40 is great. I said, fine. So what happens tomorrow when people come in and they see that number is 10 and you're telling them it's great, the space is still good, and they say, no, it's twice the level it was yesterday. We're concerned we're not going in. And so how we think about data, how we contextualize it, and how we sort of make it relevant and give some comparison, some guidance to people will be really critical about how we present the performance of buildings.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Nice one. I think we already have another question for you both. Do you think this new normal will eventually fade out, or will the effect of COVID change business practices for the unforeseeable future?
No, listen. As I said, people create habits pretty quickly, 4 to 6 weeks, and so clearly this is embedded in our ethos. I mean, kids will remember for years and years and decades to come that school ended, they were locked in their apartments. In the US, you know, even the lockdowns, we've had some freedom. In Spain, in France, in Italy, you know, lockdown meant lockdown. You didn't leave your apartment. And, you know, I think what's really important about this is COVID-19, this is the current pandemic, but there's been MERS, there's been SARS, there will be something else at some point. And so I think that this is simply going to become part of the new normal. It's going to get embedded into how we operate buildings in the built environment, how we integrate and use technology for better outcomes. I don't think this is going to go away. I don't think this is going to be something that is in the short term we deal with and then we're off to the next thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can like to conclude with actually really the COVID in a way that most of the time we ask the people what changed for you because of it. I guess the past 30 minutes you really explain what changed for you. What is the question you've been asked more during this period? What your customer asked you for the really specific? What was the biggest change, I would say?
I think there's sort of two observations. I think one is the number of clients who've come to us who, you know, where they're already working with us around sustainability and integrating technology, now coming to us and asking about healthy buildings. You know, we're designing a building, we're building a building, we're about to deliver a building and we operate a building. What should we be doing? How do we provide a better environment? How do we communicate that to potential tenants, our equity partners? You know, the capital markets are not backing down. They're actually demanding more from operators and from developers. I think the other observation, which has been particularly interesting for us, is that there's a disconnection around the world. In other words, the response has not been monolithic. You know, we've had a tremendous amount of new activity and new projects in Asia, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, China, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, all in the recent weeks. And people are saying, we need to address this, we need to do it. People are not backing down. And I think it goes to the point that I made earlier, that this crisis is going to be one that's solved by spending money, not by conserving money. And people are recognizing that there's a lot of strategic advantage that they can gain by being proactive about assessing buildings, engineering solutions that both lower costs and improve the experience for the occupants and stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Brad. I think your point of view is going in the same way as we've been sharing here some weeks ago with Anthony Slumbers, explaining that that sustainability will be one of the key points, and we need to spend money for that. So yeah, definitely the same for you. Thank you very much for being here today with us, Brad and Dominique. And I don't know what we can wish you, but wish you all the best for the future of Green Generation.
Guillaume, thank you. Merci à vous.
Merci beaucoup. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.